I've seen a case where a law firm, actually like a small legal firm, they decided to build a new onboarding flow for their clients, and they spent like 3 days, I was told over a weekend, and vibe coded an onboarding application for their clients where they would allow their clients to upload sensitive information. The idea was to,
I can see where this is going. Oh my God, no.
So the idea was to make the onboarding process a little bit more efficient. And so they built something out that was full of holes, security holes particularly. All of the client data was widely exposed.
Hello and welcome to the Tech for Non-Techies podcast. I'm your host, Sophia Matveeva. If you're a non-technical founder building a tech product or adding AI to your business, you're in the right place. Each week, you'll get practical strategies, step-by-step playbooks, and real-world case studies to help you launch and scale a tech business without learning to code. And this is not another startup show full of jargon, venture capital theater, or tech bro bravado. Here, we focus on building useful products that make money without hype and without code. I've written for the Harvard Business Review and lectured at Oxford, London Business School, and Chicago Booth, so you are in safe hands. I've also helped hundreds of founders go from concept to scalable product. And now it's your turn. So let's dive in.
Hello, smart people. How are you today? I'm recording this for you from Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates, and it is a lovely place to be in late October. I highly recommend it. And in today's lesson, we are going to discuss whether, in the age of AI, non-technical founders still need developers. And today's guest says absolutely you do. You're about to hear from Natalie Kaminski, the CEO of JetRockets. For 16 years, her team has built products for non-technical founders and for business leaders. So she has seen AI hype, she has seen the wins from AI, and she has also seen the very expensive mistakes which you're about to hear about. And in this conversation, Natalie explains why AI can generate code, but can't create a product that scales. You'll also hear her brilliant toilet in the living room analogy for what architecturally wrong looks like. We get into where AI is fantastic, why serious products still need professional engineering, and how to spot those too good to be true quotes before they burn your budget. So if you have a tech idea but no tech skills, this episode shows you exactly when to use AI and when to bring in the pros so you don't end up shipping something that's fragile, insecure, or impossible to scale. So let's learn from Natalie. In this age of AI, do non-technical founders still need developers?
Absolutely, 100%. And I would even argue that now even more so than ever. There's a lot of talk going on about how, engineers are becoming obsolete because of all these amazing AI technologies. But anyone who actually has ever used these technologies and who knows how these tools work underneath can quickly realize that developers are needed more than ever. And here's why. AI does not equal understanding. Basically, AI can generate code just like it can generate an article for LinkedIn or, any other media if you give it some information and you prompt it properly. However, it does not mean that AI, the tool that you're using, is actually going to understand what is it that you're building. So on the one hand, yes, you could probably prompt AI to build you a decently looking login page. It's not going to go on its own unless you tell it to make sure that it's secure, for instance, or to make sure to request certain, password parameters, or to make sure to know what to do with that login once you log in. And again, I'm using just very basic examples of features that, any platform has. But you can extrapolate and imagine that if you're building a somewhat complex platform that has some sort of logic about it, then you can't simply rely on AI. Because at the end of the day, building a platform is more so about the context, understanding consequences, edge cases, logic, than simply producing code. So AI is excellent at producing code. Some of that code can even be synthetically correct, but most of the time it would be architecturally wrong. And so you need to have an engineer, someone who actually understands the code and how platforms are being built in order to, oversee, correct, control, maintain, and guide the AI tool that you're using.
So without any tech jargon, do you think you'll be able to explain to our listeners what does it mean to be architecturally wrong? Or even better, could you give us an example of when maybe somebody came to you who's a non-technical founder who built something with AI and it was architecturally wrong? So we can tell what architecturally wrong means, in terms of, users or maybe wasted budgets.
Absolutely. I can even take it, further away from tech jargon and use an analogy of building a house if you feel that would be useful, right? So imagine you're building a house and you want the house to have electricity and maybe even, plumbing and, have a toilet on your first floor. And imagine that you're building that house, or some builders, let's say robots, right? The future builders of houses are building the house for you, and you're coming to see the house and you're seeing electricity, you're seeing plumbing, but your toilet is placed in the middle of your living room.
Okay. So that would be an architectural issue.
Right. So on the surface, you've got electricity, you've got plumbing, but your toilet is in the middle of your living room. Is that going to be an acceptable solution? Is that an acceptable build of your house? Probably not. So again, it's probably a little bit oversimplifying, but when it comes to web technology, it could be anything from not accounting for future growth of the system. Because when you build a system, you can build it in such a way that it solves the immediate goal, but it will not allow you to expand the functionality in a easy, simple, maintainable manner, right? So for example, if let's say you're starting out building a platform for, let's say, dating, keep it simple. It's a dating app. And one of the features is for a user to be able to upload their photo. And you can build it in such a way that the system will allow you to upload a single photo versus multiple photos. And now we're getting a little bit into sort of database relationship and how, things underneath work. So if you're going to build your platform to allow to upload a single photo for a user profile, it would be very inconvenient and unnecessarily difficult to expand the platform in the future to allow for multiple photos, as opposed to building that future scalability into the platform from the get-go.
Mm-hmm. And so how long has JetRockets been around now? You guys have been around for quite a while, right?
16 years, yeah.
Okay, wow, 16 years. So, and you're working with a lot of non-technical founders and business leaders. So, really people who are probably listening to our show. And so I'm wondering, what changes have you seen in what people are coming to you with since the AI boom? Because I'm wondering, are people coming to you saying, oh, we've created this thing with AI and now we need you to help us scale? Or are they saying, we built this thing with AI, but we don't really understand what it is? Like, how has the age of AI changed demand for your services?
I'd say all of the above, right? So I'm seeing positive changes as well as some sort of, regression, so to speak, in my found or in my target audience. So on the positive side is because of the tools that are now available, and I'm particularly referring to stuff like Lovable, for instance. Founders have a very affordable, easy to use way to ideate and build proof of concept. Something that in the past, sometimes they would have to even come to me very early on in the process and be like, hey, can you build us a proof of concept? And, inevitably they would have to spend significant amounts of money on a product that may or may not see the, light of day. Now, with the advancements in these particular technologies, they don't need to come to me. As a matter of fact, when they do, I advise them against it. I say, listen, you're at the stage that you should go and use Lovable. Build your own prototype. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to, be fully functional, but it gives you enough of functionality to be able to play around with your vision. Because, picture is worth a thousand words, right? You may think you want something, but in reality, when you put it together, you realize that no, this is not quite what I'm looking for, etc. So it gives you a quick, easy, relatively cheap, just sometimes even free way of ideating and really honing in on what is it that you're building. So on a positive note, when these people come to me, they typically now come to me at a stage where they have proven their idea. They found the product market fit, even if sort of the beginning stages of that. And we haven't wasted their budgets on that process. Now we can invest, we can take their money and spend it on actually building out a scalable, proper solution that will allow them to conquer, their user base. On the sort of flip of that is many people who fall victim to a lot of these falsehoods you can read on LinkedIn or, other media. Hey, you no longer need engineers. You can whip something out in 2 days. I guess the new term now is building AI native platforms. Well, that's just another hype word, in my opinion, right? And so they say, yeah, I don't need engineers. I can just go and vibe code something on my own. And the most dangerous are the types who have a little bit of technical skill, just enough to fool themselves into thinking that they now can be a, full sort of engineer using these technologies. And what happens is I've seen a case where a law firm, actually like a small legal firm, they decided to build a new onboarding flow for their clients. And they spent, like 3 days, I was told over a weekend, and vibe coded an onboarding application for their clients where they would allow their clients to upload sensitive information. The idea was to,
I can see where this is going. Oh my God, no.
So the idea was to make the onboarding process a little bit more efficient. And so they built something out that was full of holes, security holes particularly. All of the client data was widely exposed, anyone who wanted to. And luckily they kind of stopped themselves before going too far, but they did. They were on the verge of releasing it to their client base. And most people, they get the link from a reputable firm. They tend to just say, oh, okay, I'm going to follow the link, upload my documents, etc. They kind of assume that the firm takes their job responsibly and is not going to send them anything that's not well secured. Well, unfortunately, that's not the case. So I see those cases as well. Yeah.
Gosh, that's absolutely terrifying. And it's also making me think that as a customer for something serious, am I now going to start saying, hang on a second, how was this product made? Was this made by vibe coding or was this made by actual professionals? Because, if it's like a recipe app, I don't care if it's vibe coding. But if it's something where, I'm going to exchange money or I'm going to exchange sensitive data, then no, I want the pros to be looking at it. You actually, the number one person you described, so the version 1 is the ideal tech for non-techie student, because essentially our business and what we teach has changed as a result of AI. And when it first came, I was thinking, okay, I wonder how we can use this. I can see applications. I'm kind of skeptical about this whole, you don't need developers, but I'm not a developer myself. So let me speak to developers and see what's happening in the market. And essentially the conclusion that we came to is exactly what you're saying, is that we help people either with ideas for a whole new thing or ideas for, a new direction, like a new set of features, to use AI to create a test version. We teach them how to test it with their target market. Based on that, to see, okay, what do we need to iterate? Are we ready to go forward and actually invest more time and money in it, or do we need more experimentation? And then we always say, okay, now that you've got this, you now need to know how to work with the professionals. You need to work with the professionals and you need to, know how to get the best ROI on your investment of working with developers, professional designers, and so on. And so the first person that you described is literally like, if that's what they do and they've gone through our program, they've passed with flying colors. And what I'm actually seeing is that there are some students who went exactly through this journey less than a year ago. And, I caught up with one of our alumni who went through our program literally last November, so literally a year ago. And her product is now live. She's making money. She's hiring people. And it's because she didn't waste a huge amount of time. Well, no, I don't want to say waste. She didn't have to spend a huge amount of time before she validated her vision. And so by the time she came to speak to the professionals, her stuff was really validated. It was just more like, make this. We know exactly who we're going to send it to. We know what they're going to pay. And also for ROI, for her, it was much easier to pay developers because she knew she was going to get the money back from her customers very, very quickly. But I'm wondering, there is so much AI hype, and there's Natalie and you and me. We are frankly small business owners. And we're taking on messaging that's coming out of really, really well-funded Silicon Valley companies with, Sam Altman saying that, okay, soon you're going to have companies that only have one person because AI is going to do everything. The thing is, people are falling for this. And what I am wondering is, essentially, how do we tell people to be skeptical, but also hopeful and experiment? Because I don't want people to think that, okay, this is a scary thing. I never want to use AI, or I'm only going to use it for design because Sophia and Natalie told me so. But, maybe in 3 months' time, there will be some other application and they're listening to this later. So how do we encourage people to stay in the zone between experimental, but also not completely falling for everything that, like, Sam Altman and Elon Musk say?
Well, I mean, here's my, and my view. I'm what I like to say, I'm a healthy skeptic, right? So I definitely embrace AI, and I use AI on a daily basis in my personal life as well as my professional life. And maybe because I use it so much, I can see the, sort of the faults with it, right? I can see that it's not all knowing, all capable new technology, right? I think it's important to stay up to date about the news, but also kind of not forget about what was said a year ago, right? Or what was said like 6 months ago. If I recall correctly, and forgive me if I'm paraphrasing, but I believe it was the CEO of Perplexity that maybe 6 months ago or so, he said that, oh, we will not need engineers in 6 months.
I'm hearing things like this. And what's so interesting is that the senior engineers I know, like the really senior, like really well-paid people, even if they're not working in AI, they're not even remotely worried. Like they're not even remotely worried about, their massive salaries being less massive.
But the thing is, so my point is that, these grandiose big statements are being made to create publicity. And that's okay. That's always been the case, right? Like big companies have to create hype because that's the only way for them. Well, not the only way, but one of the ways for them to increase their valuations. And that's how our, capitalistic system works. And that's okay. It is what it is. Like we all know it. I mean, think back about the no-code revolution, right? When Bubble and such first came to market. Everyone said, oh, that's it. We're going to replace developers. What happened in reality? In reality, demand for software skyrocketed. Developers became even more valuable. Complexity increased, and so on and so forth, right? I mean,
and now you have Bubble developers, because Bubble is actually really hard to master if you're a non-technical person. And we've taught classes on Bubble, and we've actually stopped doing that because, we say, okay, we can give you the basic architecture, but to be honest, it will, like, the people who I know who build really useful things with Bubble have some sort of technical expertise. Whereas if you take a lawyer, like from your earlier example, and you give them Bubble, I mean, they will build something. It's not going to be great.
I mean, I'll give you another example. Forget technology. I mean, people, law firms, right? Like I sometimes use ChatGPT for legal advice, right?
Me too, absolutely.
But I also know where the boundary is. Right? Like I know that certain things, maybe I'll ask ChatGPT to review a contract I've been sent because I don't, want to pay $400 an hour for that, and kind of identify red flags for me. And then if there are red flags, at that point, I may decide to go to professional, right? It's sort of like I use it as a first sort of line of defense, so to speak. At the same time, a lot of our agreements or a lot of business dealings, they very strictly prohibit people from sharing the details or the information about the deal with the wider audience. So you could argue that uploading this document into ChatGPT could on its own, a violation of the contract. So my point is that a lot of people, I don't think people who are good at what they do, people who know their profession very well, can be easily replaced by technology, right? So my advice, to your point, my advice is to people who kind of like, oh, what's happening? How do I follow? Like, be the best you can be in your particular field. Know your field well. Keep an eye with the new technology, stay abreast about what's happening, how to figure out the way to effectively integrate technology into your daily life, but without jeopardizing your own skill set. Right?
Yeah, don't give up your own judgment. Exactly.
Absolutely.
So I wonder, what about your costs? Because obviously you have developers working for you, and are some of them using AI? And as a result, how has their work changed? And have your costs gone down? Have they become more productive? I'd love to understand what's happening, for the engineering side.
Yes. So this is a huge misconception, I think, right now in the industry that says that, if a developer has mastered how to use AI, they should be paid less. Well, I would argue on the contrary, and I would say that if a developer has mastered to use a new tool to become more productive and more efficient, they should be paid more. Because you can get the same stuff done at a faster rate, supposedly, right? So why would it cost less? Right? I mean, imagine if you hire, again, going back to the analogy of building a house, if you're hiring somebody to lay your bricks manually versus maybe, there's a combination of some machinery and manual labor, right? You want the machinery to be used, and people who know how to use machinery are probably more valuable in the market, in the workplace. The same goes for engineers, right? And so where we can see, so first of all, yes, we absolutely embrace AI and we absolutely use it in our workday, right? My engineers, and by the way, at JetRockets, my engineers can decide which tools they prefer to use because every tools are slightly different and people have different opinions depending upon their skill level as well as their, preferences. Like some people just basic, human, personal preferences. But where we see AI being amazing assistant is with scaffolding, testing, refactoring, naming, stuff that engineers don't want to do as it is. Like
the admin of engineering. Like every job has its own documentation and admin, and most of us just don't like that.
Things that are tedious, take a lot of quote unquote manual labor, and just where engineers were forced to do it by hand because there were no such tools. Now they can automate these processes. And then that is excellent. That saves, a good engineer, like a well-skilled engineer at JetRockets, if they embrace AI and they integrate AI in their daily operation, they can be, 30, sometimes even 40% more effective. That's awesome, right?
That's a huge time saving and a huge productivity saving, which means that they can work on more projects take some time off.
Absolutely, right? They can work on more projects, but also should the clients pay less? The clients don't pay us. When you hire a professional, you don't hire them for time. You hire them for value.
Yeah, you hire
or at least that's how we operate, right? Yeah. So if I can deliver value faster, I could even argue that I should be charging more.
Well, it's like, I think the example that everybody can relate to is if you were to go to a dentist and you had to have a root canal, God help you if that's the case. And one person said, okay, I'll do it in half an hour. And the other person said, I'll do it in 5 hours. I mean, I would, and the half an hour person is more expensive. I would just be like, just take my money, and the shorter, the better. So
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
What are you finding in terms of kind of client expectations? Are people now expecting the impossible because of AI? Are they now saying, okay, well, if I'm going to hire developers in the first place, I expect that, I'm going to pay you, I don't know, $20,000, and essentially I'm going to have like the equivalent of Facebook tomorrow.
Yes. Yes, I see that. And, I always say that not every client is a good client for us, and that's okay. I'm not trying to win every piece of business. And I did have several leads that came to me with, expectations that were completely unreasonable. I had a person present to me a 35-page PRD, product requirement document, that included a lot of complexity. The product had to do with financial services, like basically a lot of complexity, a lot of processing, a lot of data calculations, manipulations, and whatnot. And when I kind of gave them a ballpark estimate, which was pretty reasonable and based on my experience and, everything we've built in 16 years, the response was, oh my God, this is way too much. I was told that this can be done in like 2 weeks for like $10,000. And my only response to them was, that's awesome. Go with that firm if that's how you're inclined to do. I'm not going to see my position is that I'm not going to, like when we're so far away from each other, right? There is no point in having that argument. If a person thinks, what I find extremely puzzling is when a person comes with an idea and they say, I'm going to make tens of millions of dollars, but I'm only willing to spend a few thousand on it. I'm like, that's not how the world works. You cannot expect to spend a few $1,000s and as a result have yourself a business that's going to make you millions and millions and millions. It's just simply impossible. If it were possible, I guess we'd all be millionaires, right? By now. But it's not possible. To make money, you have to spend money. Be that on development, on marketing, on user acquisition, and other, things. You have to spend money. And until you realize it as a founder, you will not be able to succeed.
And, also I think what you're saying that, that $10,000 example versus whatever you were saying, let's say 6 figures, I don't know, 100,000. I think it's useful for founders and for business leaders to just keep that in mind, that when you're going around and you're getting costs, that's a good thing to do. That's a totally normal thing to do. You should survey the market and understand what's going on. But if you have somebody who's such an outlier with a really low price and you're thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. It's just that thing of, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And I'm not saying I haven't fallen for it myself. I mean, for long-time listeners of the podcast, you'll know that when I first got into tech entrepreneurship, we tried to create our first version of an app using a tool called React Native. And that tool was basically too early, too young, and it didn't work. I won't go into the whole thing now, but essentially we tried to cheat the system, basically, by using this cool new tool, which promised us releasing on Apple and on Android simultaneously. And what ended up happening is that we spent $10,000 and, a couple of months creating something that was completely unusable, having to scrap it and then go to the expensive version anyway. So just, 2 months later and $10,000 later. And, when I look back at that, I think, well, I was a baby founder. I didn't know what I was doing. And given the information, and also Tech for Non-Techies didn't exist. Nobody was telling me not to do it. And so given the information I had at the time, that decision made sense. But if you are listening to this show, you don't have the excuse to do this sort of thing. You have to see that, okay, if there's one really cheap outlier that's promising to solve it all with AI, and then other firms who have built products that are actually being used, maybe those firms have been around for a while, they're saying something wildly different, then, okay, you have to be really skeptical. So my last question as we wrap up, What would be your advice, Natalie, to a business owner who has an idea for how to add tech to their business, or, your typical non-technical founder who has an idea for an app, for example? So when they are thinking, okay, I've got this idea, I know I've learned that I need to use AI for testing, I know that then I need to go to developers, but, that person is also going to have a lot of pressure on them saying, oh, you shouldn't, your cost should be much lower, like you should use AI for everything, where are you integrating AI in your product? To that person who is inevitably in this market going to have that pressure, what would you say to them? What's your advice?
Well, first, I suggest that they found a reliable partner who is, on the one hand, definitely, up to date about latest technologies, right? So yes, embraces AI, uses AI as a tool and knows where to apply AI, but having that partner in their corner to be able to together, especially as a non-tech founder, you have to have someone who would act as your quote unquote fractional CTO, right? And you do not need to hire that fractional CTO as a standalone person, right? You could find a partner, a development partner, who is going to build your product, but also advise you at a strategic level. And, help them explain to you and explain to your potential investors, advisors, partners, users, whatever, what role does AI play in your product and what role should it play in your product? I recently had an example where one of my long-standing clients was approached by such an advisor and was told, and she was told that, oh, your product, which by the way has been on the market for 5 years, super successful, making money, everything is great with the product. But this quote unquote self-proclaimed advisor said that unless she converted her app to be an AI native app, then that's again, the same term being used, then a couple of college students will replicate her business over a weekend. And I mean, people have to be held responsible for statements like this because it's irresponsible. It's immature. It's irresponsible. It has nothing to do with reality. Business is
not like that. I mean, even let's say the product could be replicated. It can't be. But let's imagine let's just take that variable out of the equation. That's not the only thing that makes the business successful.
I mean, anyone can go and vibe code an app nowadays. Right? But it doesn't mean that everyone will have wild success in the marketplace. So I think I'm going to wrap this up with one advice. Focus on the business. Focus on the product that you're building, which means focus on the solution that you're providing to your users. Why are you doing what you're doing and how you can do it best? And partner with a reliable partner who will take care of your tech for you, because you're a non-tech founder, and who will be able to have honest and open conversations about, where and why to use AI. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that is a really, really useful note to end on. So thank you very much, Natalie. It's been a pleasure having you back on the Tech for Non-Techies podcast.
Thank you, Sophia.
Wasn't that interesting? My 2 insights from this conversation are, number 1, use AI to prototype and to test quickly. And number 2, bring in engineers to design for security, scale, and the future that you actually want. And if this sparked an idea and you want to bring your product to life using AI, so to test your product, to have something visual that you can show people using AI, then what you need is my free class, How to Make Your First Product Using AI. You will learn how to turn your idea into something you can actually show and test with real users so you can get feedback and then work with developers the smart way. Go to techfornontechies.co/AI class to get it on demand or tap the link in the show notes. And on that note, have a wonderful day and I shall be back in your delightful smart ears next week. Ciao!